Thank you, friends, for bearing with us for the last 3 days. Professor Armstrong, Dr. Brian Ifford, Mr. Alok Parthi, Mr. Sudhir Vasudeva, Mr. Jeffrey Ellis, Dr. Narayanan, Mr. Arshad Saeed, Dr. Saxena, and Dr. Anil Garg. It has indeed been a pleasure to interact with so many committed people over the last 3 days. The greatest encouragement is that on one side we have the wisdom of our forefathers sitting here and blessing us in the sector, and the other side we have the youth who will take over the torch from us and may be standing on this podium 30 years or 40 years from now. That is the greatest satisfaction for people in our generation. Dr. Garg mentioned, and some others mentioned, that there was the apprehension that how can petroleum and coal be together at the same forum? It's not surprising, because you do not expect two tigers from neighboring forests to sit together for breakfast and shake hands. It's natural. The two giants of the energy sector, each a king in its own right. But then, in India we say, there is an age that we are passing through is Kali Yuga. And when two tigers sit together for breakfast and discuss the welfare of entire civilization, it only means that the world is moving towards a more sustainable and a better place. I think the experts from various fields who have assembled here to give their unbridled thoughts, uncensored opinions, it is a matter of great learning and satisfaction. This assembly, though a modest one, is an assembly of uncensored opinion, uninhibited discussions, and no need for any doctored speeches to please certain audiences. I think time is too short for playing games and for stances, just for the sake of it. We meet here for people traveling long distances to meet us. We always want them to go away, whether young friends or old, with a feeling that this was a heart-to-heart chat. And that what emerges out of it is a distilled wisdom that we all agree in a consensus form. It may not relate entirely to our own situation, but it relates to a majority of mankind that is inhabiting this planet. It may not serve the commercial interests of the organizations that we serve, but it serves the economic interests of some of our more unfortunate brethren on this planet. And that really is a mission that pushes all of us to events like this, where there is no monetary gain to be attained. It's only giving an honest intellectual accent or a direction, and maybe a small signal to the powers that be to take a message for taking the policies of developing countries and maybe some other countries also forward. Because I liked what Arshad said, and that is that this world needs a more equity in our thinking, it needs more empathy, and it needs more long-term thought. Any producer of a commodity who only thinks of his own profits or the welfare of his own organization will never be sustainable unless he makes his consumer also healthy and sustainable. That is the best relationship. We in this sector who happen to serve commercial interests or governments must realize that after all we exist to serve the people of this planet. And this is more so in developing countries. We talk of market mechanisms. They are an excellent proposition. Proposition where markets are perfect and where pockets are elastic. But there are regions where pockets do not exist. Their people do not have money to put in pockets. They have to live to the next day. And if you have to live to the next day in a vibrant democracy, where you have to respect the wishes and the rights of our fellow citizens, there is need for the more fortunate ones amongst us to take care and think of those who have not reached our level. Many of us who have had occasion to speak at such fora are people who are blessed with talent, with the good fortune of having resources at our command, maybe sometimes the fortune of having a good berth to have a launching pad. But the real task lies in serving and identifying the unnamed person who is an inhabitant of this planet, who does not even know the complexities of government and the commercial world, but who expects, sometimes through the faith of religion, whoever be his almighty, or the justice of nature, to give him what he needs to survive. I think that, in my view, is the mission of unattached and non-commercial organizations like the Energy and Environment Foundation, which is a no-profit organization, which depends on the goodwill of people like all of you to come, share your views, talk over in the conference room, extended over tea and lunch and dinner breaks, and go back with the feeling that we have contributed to mankind. And I think each of the successive congresses that I have attended over the last 4 years, I did not have the fortune of attending the first one, has given me at least that satisfaction that in the 3 days at our command, we have done our bit. And not only deliberated amongst those who have been policymakers or are policymakers, but have also involved the coming generations in this thought process. We have also had the satisfaction of having a direct interaction with the highest political levels concerning our disciplines, at least in this country, who have eagerly taken some useful thoughts from our side and have pledged to carry them forward. I think that for all participants here, I think is the biggest fruit of their labor. I must appreciate the hard work which has been put in by Dr. Anil Razdan and his selfless team for having put this event together. For all colleagues and friends who have helped in making this event possible, and all those who this year may have been converted to this cause. The declaration that we have just adopted is a set of recommendations which is more relevant to developing countries. Because the developed countries do not need much advice. They have their own mechanisms in place, but the task is to carry everyone together. They may not have universal application, but there are some guiding principles which we thought that those who may wish to look at them, and many will, I am sure, I assure you, will take note of these, and probably this forum would have contributed in a subtle way for betterment of policy making and implementation. Some policies that we have discussed at this venue in the past have already found their place in policy making. The beauty of this forum, however small it is that it finds its participation from people who have a vast arena of experience, not only in terms of length of time, but also in terms of diversity and interdependence. One of my colleagues here from the dais had made a point that any single policy cannot be valid for all points of time. Similarly, any single fuel or energy source cannot be valid for all points of time. We have to see the whole idea of integration is to do value addition to our efforts and to make sure that with the growing concern of climate change, that we act together to use our resources of energy more efficiently in a much more sane way, and also in a manner that satisfies both the producer as well as the end user. It also brings out the fact that no situation in the commercial world is constant. We all have to be ready for change, be flexible. Only one thing is common, and that is throughout generations, the good of humanity as a whole, if it has to survive as a planet. Thank you very much.